Letters on the Water, Sharing My Perspective by Thomas Leigh.
Today I'm going to discuss life without time. In the first part, I would like to answer the question how it would be like to live without time. And in the second part, I would like to describe the spiritual perspective, the perspective of a spirit regarding time. So let's begin with the first part, how it would be like to live without time. So now I imagine the world without time, without that concept of time. So for example, in that world there are no clocks, no watches. No measuring time, no counting years. There is no such thing as a date. What the date is, or what the day is today, what the month is, what year. All those things don't exist. So living in that world, for example, I am not aware how old I am. I am present here. I am growing. Over the time I am getting older. But I am not aware how many years passed by regarding my presence, my identity, my body. So I am free of several labels, like being 15 years old, 20 years old, 40, like being a teenager, being adult, like being mature or immature, being old or aged. I am free of all those labels. For other people, I am just another person. Not young, not old, not teenage, not adult. But I am just me. I am just myself. In any age, There is no such thing as measuring time. So nobody is counting years. What else? For example, I do things whenever I want, and I do those things as long as I want. But not being aware how long I am doing something, because I don't measure it. Because I don't measure time, I am not aware of how long I'm doing anything. I am just guided, I could say, that I am just guided by my inner voice. What I mean by that? Let's imagine that now I am engaged in my passion. Maybe I just woke up and some time later I decided to do something which pleases me much, which gives me much excitement, much satisfaction. And I'm doing it as long as I can, as long as I want, as long as I feel that need, that drive to do that particular thing. So for me, in that world, it's not important what is the time, what the time is. Because without time, without clocks, that concept of hours, minutes, and so on, without that concept, never is too late. Never is too long. In that world, you can't become an early bird. You can't do anything too long. You can't finish anything too late. There is no such possibility for you to do anything too long, to finish anything too late. Because of that awareness without time. So instead of being aware how long, for example, I'm doing something, I'm just free, and I can be totally focused on what I am doing right now. Without paying any attention to how long I will be doing that thing. It could be a wonderful feeling to have that opportunity to do anything to my heart's content, as much as I want, as much as I desire. Fulfillment, satisfaction. When I could get to sleep, when I feel that my body can't sustain me, so to speak, any longer, and by that I mean my body is too tired or maybe exhausted. So in that point, I could decide to finish my activity and have some rest or sleep. And how long I should sleep, how long I should stay in bed. The same thing, as long as I want, as long as I feel. I strongly believe that we all have that inner voice, inner guidance, which can direct us properly. Some people call it a biological clock, but I mean much wider concept. Speaking of inner voice. And that inner voice, inner feeling, can let me know when I should wake up, when I should leave my bed and begin my day. And it doesn't matter when I will do that. In the morning, or maybe in the evening, or maybe at night. It doesn't matter, because in that world, in that society, in that community, everyone respects that attitude, totally based on the inner voice. What else? What about the past present, and the future. In that thought experiment I am describing right now, they don't exist. Those concepts of past, present, and future. If we could imagine those concepts as separate threads, in that world without time, we could imagine people have only one thread, so to speak. And this one thread, this one concept, is the now, the present moment. Which is always. You could visualize that concept in a form of a clock, but without numbers. Instead of numbers, in that clock you could see the word now. Repeated 24 times. Now, 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 now. Always is now. Always is the present moment. So living in that world with that attitude, with that mentality, thinking about the past, for me, the past would exist in the same time, in the present, while I am thinking about it. And the same with the future. Thinking about my future, for me, it would be the same like the present. For me, everything which I'm going to do in the so-called future would exist in the now, but in another form. Of course, my particular plan or intention is not yet materialized or not achieved, but it exists in a form of, for example, a thought, or in a form of a dream, in a form of a vision, in a form of a desire. So for me, this is just a matter of another form, not another time. So for me, that plan, that intention, that desire is real right now, even not being materialized or achieved yet. For me, it's real. It's very real. And I respect that form, that thought form, so to speak, the same way as I would respect the form in which that desire is already achieved. There is no dream on attitude in that word, because everyone respects what you feel. Everyone respects your dreams. This is not even important if you will achieve something or not. The only thing which is important is if you follow your inner voice. And if you follow your inner voice, you are on the right track. Always. There is no such thing as a failure. You can't fail. You can only grow. You can only learn. But there is no such thing as a failure. Trials and errors are only development, personal development, spiritual development. Everything in that development has its own value. So-called mistakes, there are no mistakes. They are experiences which can help you growing, which can help you in your evolution. Which can help you to do some particular thing better next time. And nobody judges you on the basis of how long it takes for you to achieve anything. Because in that community, it doesn't matter. Because there is no time. There is only now, and only the inner voice respect for individual path. So to summarize that thought concept, world without time, life without time, how it would be like to live that way. In that world, we need to forget about our own age, the age of our bodies. We need to forget about clocks, dates, locating yourself in time, which month is it, which day, which year. We can be free of all of that, all of those things. And also, there is no past, there is no present and future together. There is only one present moment happening all the time. Eternal moment, an eternal moment, so to speak. I said about the future, but for example, when I think about the past, what I remember is real for me, has the same value like at the time when it happened. But let's leave that thought experiment now and turn into the second part of this talk. The part in which I will describe the spiritual perspective. The perspective of a spirit regarding time. First, I need to explain how I perceive human beings. I perceive human being as an entity made of two aspects, so to speak. two parts or facets. One part, one layer, maybe it would be a better term, layers. So one layer is a body layer. But there is also another layer. A layer of a spirit. And that layer is eternal, so to speak. It's not confined, not limited regarding life on earth, which could be quite short. I believe that when our body dies, we still exist in that form of a spirit. And we exist at the time, we exist fully on a spiritual plan. And that spiritual plan has its own perspective, so to speak. Or in other words, living or existing in that plan, I believe we have different perspective, different perception of several things, like time. And I would like to describe you what I think would be that perspective, that perception of time in that spiritual plan. So this is another thought experiment, so to speak, another visualization. Like, you can easily imagine some map, world map, with all the countries, oceans, seas, and so on. The map of the world contains of every place on earth. Every place. On that map, you can find any place you want. Any place on earth is placed on that map. So, in other words, you have all the planet in front of you in a form of a map. Every place, this is important, every place in the same time you can see, you can perceive. So let's add to that picture the time concept. I mean, like you have on that map every place existing on Earth. The same with time. Imagine that on that map you have also every time. So if you try to imagine that, you could imagine that in a form of multi-layered map, multi-dimensional, in which you can see more than places. You can see also many time-related layers. For example, you could see a medieval layer of your map. And in the same time, you could see the current, for example, the current time map, or some 30th century map of the world. But what is important is that you can perceive all the time, all times, simultaneously, in a form of many layers, overlaying each other. So we have that multi-layered or multi-dimensional map, including all places and all times. And now, having that picture in mind, having that visualization, imagine that map is a lake. Or imagine a lake which is the very same concept as that previously described map. So imagine a lake which contains every time and every place. So in other words, imagine that lake is the whole space and the whole time. Or again, in other words, imagine the whole space-time you can perceive in a form of a lake. Imagine being present on the plan, on the realm of existence, in which you can perceive the space-time in a form of a lake. And now imagine your purpose of visiting that lake could be that you could simply want to go fishing. In order to fish something. But not fish, in fact, but experience. Like an angler, you went to that place, to that lake. You are sitting near the water. And you are going to cast a line in order to grab some experience, so to speak, in order to gain experiences. And as I said before, in front of you, you have that lake full of time and full of space, which means that lake really represents all the time and all the space. So, in fact, it's endless. And now, if you decide to, or if you are wondering where to cast a line, you have all the time and all the space available at your command. You can choose between every time and every place which exists. You can freely choose. You can choose freely out of that lake, eternal, boundless, limitless, endless lake. And one important thing is being in that plan, in that situation, sitting near the water. It is available for you to cast many lines simultaneously. So, for example, you could decide to cast one particular line into one particular spot in that lake, which could be, for example, a medieval Europe. But in the same time, you are able to cast another line somewhere else in that lake on its surface. And that particular spot would be, for example, 2031 United States, somewhere in the United States, in that year. So you have two lines casted into the lake's waters, but each of them represents completely different time and place. And it is possible because in that lake, as I said before, you have all the time and all the space available for you now. So, in fact, you could cast many lines in the same time, simultaneously. In order to gain experiences, many experiences. What those experiences would be? Those experiences would, for example, take a form of a human being. A single line which you have casted would represent a particular identity, a particular human being living on Earth, for example. As I said before, in some particular time, and place. And of course, from that perspective, from the perspective of that single identity, things seem to be different. Because from that perspective, the only thing which exists is that identity. Nothing above, nothing else. That identity placed in, for example, three-dimensional realm would experience the concept of time, linear time, which in fact would be nothing else but kind of optical illusion. From higher perspective, it would be only an optical illusion. But from that lower perspective, so to speak, that perspective of a single identity, this could be very convincing. Those concepts of past, present, and future, for example. And in the same time, the concept of me. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? But back to that visualization of a lake and fishing experiences. The one who are doing that, the one who are fishing, is just casting lines and gaining experiences. So from that perspective, from the perspective of that being, the life of a person in 21st century in America is happening in the same time when the life of a person living in the Middle Ages in Europe. If that fishing being decided to cast those particular lines, of course. The line into medieval age in Europe and the line into more modern times in America. Although for that being, that term modern doesn't exist from obvious reasons. Having all times and places available simultaneously, it doesn't matter. Terms like where and when, they are just like pointing or playing with the map, with some map, as I described before. Traveling with the help of your finger through the map, multi-layered, multi-dimensional. So, that concept of fishing experiences, so to speak, gaining experience, perceiving the time and space like a lake, eternal, endless lake, in which you can fish. You can angle. This is the way I perceive the spiritual perspective. I believe this is possible for us to experience time that way. From that spiritual plan, of course. And this concept has many implications, many fascinating implications for me. Maybe I will describe them in one of following episodes of the Letters on the Water. But now, I just wanted to share with that subject, life without time. And timeless perspective, spiritual perspective. That's all by now. I'm Thomas Leigh. Thank you.
Letters on the wall, slowly, 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 for you. By Thomas Leigh.